Hi, and welcome back to the Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes series, where I give my notes and thoughts on DMing my group of intrepid, brave players through Out of the Abyss, the D&D 5e Underdark adventure, at my friendly local game store. If you're new to these videos, this series, this is not an actual play. It's not a blow-by-blow of everything that happened. Instead, it's sort of an overview and a summary of running the campaign of Out of the Abyss. Maybe some rules clarifications that came up, some sort of insight into how I DM and tips that I think may be helpful to other DMs and that sort of thing. So anyway, so if you're new, that's what you can expect from this. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much. So let's jump right in to viewer feedback. Let's see here. So I've got my +3 spectacles of viewer feedback on, and let's see what we got going on here. So first feedback we have is from Kevin Braun. Kevin is proudly flying the maple leaf of Canada in his profile pic or his avatar pic, and he said, my party is currently working their way through the Labyrinth, and I have unfortunately just passed where you are. Again, your videos have been extremely helpful thus far. In their travels through the Labyrinth, I completely skipped the Adamantine Tower. A couple of my players are quite active on D&D forums, and I'm sure that they knew how to exploit the item into a massive free fireball, quote unquote. And yeah, I think that Daern's Instant Fortress has been used as a free, repeatable fireball probably for a long time by D&D players. And the description of the Dungeon Master's Guide even, basically talks about the damage it'll do if you use it that way. My group just encountered Yeenoghu. I guess that's how Yeenoghu. I'll say Yeenoghu, and managed to stay hidden while he killed the Garistro. To increase suspense, he is going to chase them into the maze engine, as per the book's suggestion. Great stuff, Shane. Keep it up. So I appreciate the comments, Kevin. And I said, yeah, if you definitely want your players to go to the maze engine encounter, which is optional. That's a fun way of doing it, fun being, evil DM laughter, right? So, let's see what else you got going on here. I have a feeling that some people might skip the Adamantine Tower, however you want to say that. In fact, there's another comment that we have on video 7.3 that somebody else said they were going to do the same thing. And in fact, our group, this video will end with our group beginning the Yeenoghu, however you say it, encounter. We're just starting that. So next session, which will, in my time, will be tomorrow night, we'll be finishing that out. So thanks for your comments. But yeah, it's a good way that, if you definitely want them to go to the maze engine, do that. I'm actually dropping the Great March. There's an encounter where you can encounter a bunch of modrons that have been sort of lost for a couple of 100 years. And that's a way to get people to the maze engine if you want to. However, my group has the modron with them that was a prisoner in the Beholder's Lair in the Vast Oblivion. So I'm going to use that modron to get them there, drop some hints, and they can either follow them or not. So Lord Cephalion said, sorry I haven't been on to comment in a long while. Hey, Lord Cephalion, that's totally cool. I'm just glad you pop by when you can. Haven't been keeping up with these videos much thanks to life being life, and I certainly know how that feels. I'm currently trying to make some serious life changes, so I've been rather distracted. Well, Lord Cephalion, I genuinely, I don't know you personally, but I certainly hope that those life changes go okay. Change is never easy, and it sounds like you're trying to make those changes. So assuming that these are good changes that you want to do, I wish you well and all success. So he said, I'll be trying to catch up slowly over time, but figured I'd pop in this one to see how things are going. Good to see you're still going strong and everything seems okay on your end. Yeah, it is going well. Busy but well, I would say, is the key phrase for my life at the moment. Now, Lord Cephalion goes in, because we talked a little bit in video 73 about short rests and how many can you take in between long rests, and really the answer is as many as you want. And you spend your hit dice and this and that and the other. And kind of talked about that, seems a little overpowered. I think I talked about that last video. Well, anyway, Lord Cephalon, has a really good house rule where he kind of keeps the essence of short and long rests, but makes it a little less OP, right? So, I mean, you can still get some benefits, but you don't just, we'll stop for an hour, 5 times a day and get hit points back. And, it's a little bit more of a managed system. And long rests don't fully heal, but you can use hit dice and stuff at that time. So it's a nice system. If you're looking to house rule how long and short rests work, because that is, it doesn't bother me enough. I'm like, I hate 5th edition. I mean, I love 5th edition, but the more I play it, I do think that the long rests kind of, I mean, you just get all your hit points back and all conditions are gone for the most part and that kind of thing. Is a little OP compared to, other editions. And the short rests are really starting to feel OP to me. Now, if it was limited within a 24-hour period, maybe not so much, but, it is a little, I don't know, what's the word that you say, twinkish, I guess. And like I said, the system's not broken by any means, but if you want to, it could sometimes be hard to challenge characters when they've come through a tough fight and they're like, oh, we short rest. And they recharge quite a bit just off a short rest. So, if you're looking for I by no means gave all of Lord Cephalon's house rule here, just kind of a little overview, go to the comments on video 7.3 and check out his, house rule system. And for me personally, I think that, if, and I mean, I probably won't, especially not up at the store, but if I ever ran a campaign at home that was just among my friends, and I'm more, liberal. I don't know if liberal is the right word. I'm more allowing. I'm more open. I'm less sort of restrictive at a store because it's there for the store. It's for people to come in and everyone to have fun. So I let a lot more stuff fly than I may otherwise house rule. If I were to house rule personally, I think I would just restrict short rests to 2 between long rests at the most. No matter how many hit dice you spend on each, whatever, you just get 2. Because otherwise, I mean, you could just short rest and then go fight, short rest, go fight, short rest, go fight, short rest, go fight, short rest, or whatever. And it just seems a little, or we hit a trap. Okay, short rest now, it could be abused. Now, my group really doesn't, which is probably why I haven't really messed with it too much. But the more I consider the actual game mechanic, it does seem a little OP, a little, too powerful as far as, negating the consequences of risky behavior or combat or whatever. So anyway, okay. That's not to say that I hate short rest or I hate long rest or I hate 5th edition. Don't mishear me. I think it's a great edition. Okay. And then finally, Cody Lloyd, said, I looked at the fortress when I was looking for magic items for a one-shot. I thought of the fireball effect immediately. We're talking about Daern's instant fortress again. Needless to say, my party didn't get it, but I did not know about the tower needing to be completely empty, which is good to know. Yeah, that's very important. Anything in there, best I can tell, that is not part of the actual magic item itself will keep it from shrinking. And then he said, I also wanted to ask you if you were running a game at Free RPG Day. I was too late getting in on the Star Trek one-shot last year, but wanted to try again. Okay, so what Cody's talking about here, if you're in the central Arkansas area or in Arkansas or whatever, or if for some reason you just don't mind driving, at Game Goblins, which is a game store, very good game store here in Little Rock, they sponsor my radio show and podcast. And so a lot of times when they have events, I will, go run one-shot games and that sort of things. And I like to, even though I love D&D, I like to take these kind of events and run one-shots of game systems that I'd like to try out or that I think people would be fun. Like I'll run GURPS or, Dungeon Fantasy GURPS or Numenera or, I've ran the Star Trek playtest, Star Trek Adventures playtest. So this year, I'm planning on running Dusk City Outlaws, which is an RPG designed by Rodney Thompson, who was part of the original D&D 5e team, and it's basically Ocean's 11 meets fantasy RPG. So it's in a fantasy world, magic, medieval weapons and this and that, and but you're planning a heist. So and I've got a video out there. There's an unboxing and kind of first look video that I did at Dust City Outlaws that people can go check out if they're interested in learning more about Dust City Outlaws. But Cody, you and anybody else who wants to be there, yeah, come on out to. They are doing a free RPG day. I think it's June 19th. Let me look here. Let me look at my calendar. No, it's June 16th. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure it's June 16th. And there'll be free RPG day events all over the place, but definitely at Game Goblins in Little Rock. So, come on in and come on down and check that out, whether you play in my game or not. And if Cody or if anybody else comes to Game Goblins on free RPG day, and, if you see me, come say hi. Like Cody introduced himself to me at Little Rock Comic Con. I think it was Little Rock Comic Con last year. And Cody, I'll be at Little Rock Comic Con again this year. So hopefully I'll get to see you. Okay. And I believe it was your little brother you were with, Cody. Maybe it was your little cousin, but I'm thinking it was your little brother. Either way, tell him I said hi. So maybe I'll get to see him again too. I thought that was really cool that you played D&D with him. So, okay. That's it for the comment or the viewer feedback. So I'm going to take off my +3 spectacles of viewer feedback, and we shall kind of dig more into what happened last session. Okay, and as I like to do, before I get into the recap proper, like, hey, here's the scenario and how it unfolded, I like to kind of discuss rules, questions, or clarifications that came up directly, not from viewer feedback or anything like that, but from the actual session. So I've got a few of those, not a whole lot, but a few here. And the first one was we clarified, because there was a couple of times where a player readied an action. And when you ready an action, you basically, instead of taking your action on your turn during the combat round, you can say, I'm going to ready an action, and you state the circumstance that will trigger that action. And then if that triggering event happens, then you can choose whether to go ahead and take a reaction or not. And the thing that came up was like, was it a full action? In my head, I was thinking it was a full action. Go ahead and take your full action. But in fact, it's only a reaction. So you can take anything you can do as a reaction, you can do when you're ready. So for example, if you're like, I'm gonna hold here, and if that enemy comes up within melee range to me, then I will, and this is just an example. I mean, you can have other triggering events. You could say if somebody cast a light spell, anything, you can state what the triggering event is, and as long as you and the DM are cool with it, then that's what it is. So, anyway, but the thing is, it's a reaction. That's what you can take. And then if you use your reaction, the reaction's done, so then you don't get an attack of opportunity and all of that stuff if that comes up. And so the main things to remember: if you ready an action, when the triggering event happens, you can take a reaction. So anything you could do as a reaction, you can take. And yes, I'm drinking coffee and an energy drink. Thank you very much. So, anyway, and it's you don't have to take the reaction once the triggering event happens. It's up to you. It gives you the option. So there you go. And you can cast a spell and hold it until a triggering event happens. So go look, and that gets a little bit more detailed. So go look up the ready action. It's one of the combat options under the main combat rules for 5e, and it goes a little bit more into that. Sneak attack. For some reason, I don't know why this came up, but we're like, can you sneak attack at range? And of course you can sneak attack at range. In fact, to sneak attack, it either needs to be a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon. And any attack that you could do with an advantage, if you can sneak attack, like say you're a rogue and you have the sneak attack class ability, or maybe there's something else that gives you sneak attack. If you can sneak attack, or if you would have advantage on an attack, then you can sneak attack. You can also sneak attack if there's an enemy, not necessarily your ally, but an enemy of your opponent or your target within 5 feet of it. Not 5 feet of you, 5 feet of it. So if you're ranged, is 20 feet away, and your target, one of its enemies, not necessarily your ally, but one of its enemies is within 5 feet, then you can sneak attack. So there you go. So ranged is not a problem. In fact, it specifically says to sneak attack it has to be a finesse or ranged weapon. So there you go. And then finally, we had a situation where, I just kind of DM fiat ruled on the spot. And it seems like looking around and, reading forums and trying to look up the rules that this is a DM fiat situation because it's not specifically addressed in the 5e game rules engine. And it's also, there's a lot of underlying principles in the game rules of D&D that can be applied. Like, even though it's not specifically, there's a rule for it, you can go, oh, I'll take this principle and da-da-da. This isn't one of those cases, best I can tell. So they fought some Minotaurs again. Minotaur! And a Minotaur, did that charge attack, hit a character, so knocked them back. And there was another player character immediately behind them. And I'm like, what happens? So to me, if you get charged and a character gets slammed back into another character, there should be damage. Now, somebody could maybe argue that, oh, well, it just knocks them both prone or something like that. But in my mind, I'm thinking there's this big, huge Minotaur. It just charged, it just slammed, and it knocked me back into somebody else. Then not only, because if you get charged by a Minotaur and the charge is successful and all that, and you get gored, then you get knocked prone. If they run 10 feet and then try to gore you, it's like a charge attack. We've talked about that a little bit in a previous video about Minotaurs. So while you're in this part of Out of the Abyss, definitely make sure that you're up on your Minotaur stat block. So they can be quite nasty if even though they're only CR3 if they're run correctly. If you use good tactics with them, that charge is nasty. But anyway, so on the spot, I couldn't find any rules that specifically addressed it. I mean, there does talk about you can't end your turn in another character's spot and, square, and you can't, there's shoving rules and this, that, and the other, but there's not really, best I can tell, any rules about one player being knocked into another character or even, knocked into a wall, that kind of thing. So I just said, well, you're both going to take D6 damage, 1d6 damage, kind of like falling, 10 feet of falling, that's how much force is happening. And I just ruled that on the spot. And I think I rolled 1d6 and whatever that was, that's the damage that both of them got. So there you go. Just kind of ruled that on the spot. So, don't be afraid to do that as a DM. Just, keep the game going. This makes sense, explain to the players like, hey, I don't really know if there's a rule that cover this. So this is how I'm going to do it. And, explain why. And they're like, okay, that's fine. So, move on. But I would be curious how other people would handle it. Or do you know of a rule that specifically covers it in 5e? Not being shoved, not, falling. But I'm talking about specifically a character being forcefully knocked into another character or into a wall. Do you know of a rule in 5e that addresses that? Because best I could tell, looking through the rules and then also, kind of going on forums and searching around, most people are like, yeah, 5e doesn't really have a rule for that. Just, do it this way or make something up or whatever. So there you go. Okay. So having said that, at the end of last session, before the session I'm recapping now, they had arrived, they had done the Adamantine Tower, and they got the Daern's Instant Fortress, so they have the Daern's Instant Fireball, instant and repeatable Fireball, and they were at the Spiral of the Horned King. So remember, I mentioned this last video, but I kind of did the labyrinth wrong by the book, and that I had them kind of in the labyrinth and explaining the terrain and before they got to the Spiral of the Horn King. But technically, they don't really get into the labyrinth until they go through the maze of the Spiral of the Horn King. So there you go. So they end up coming to the Spiral of the Horn King. This is technically the beginning of the labyrinth, even though the Adamantine Tower can be done either on the way to or leaving the labyrinth if you choose to run the Adamantine Tower. So it can be done before Spiral of the Horn King or after if you want, when they're leaving. Okay, so here's the Spiral of the Horn King. Says the tunnel you've been following gradually widens until it opens to a cave with a high ceiling overhead. Patches of glowing fungi cling to the walls and fill the chamber with a dim light. Columns of stone support the ceiling, the rock marbled with veins of glittering crystal. Across the chamber, a great cleft is ringed by a profusion of sigils and glyphs. Stacked to either side of the opening are mounds of severed heads. And most of these severed heads are gnolls, Gnolls, but there are a few different Underdark races heads that can be found in there. And of course, my players were like, oh, what kind of heads are they? And a couple of them were trying to dig through there and find loot and all that good stuff. Now, the sigils and the glyphs and all that are invocations to Baphomet that are dire curses, and the inverted names of the gods are scrawled around the cleft in dried blood and continue on down the tunnel walls. Anyone who can read the abyssal tongue can tell that this place has been consecrated in the name of Baphomet, the Horn King and Lord of Minotaurs. So there you go. Now, what'll happen pretty soon after they've arrived and before they've gone in, there's a gnoll that will creep out, and there's some more descriptive text for him. And he's all messed up, and he's only got one good eye, and he's kind of whimpering and beat up and psychologically, cowering. And his name is Gash. Now there's some stats in here on page 181. He's only got 11 hit points. He has a slower walking speed. He's got disadvantage on wisdom saving throw because he's got physical and mental abuse, et cetera, et cetera. And he offers to guide the party through the maze, because once they enter this cleft, this opening, they're going to be in a maze. And once they get through the maze, then they'll be in the labyrinth proper, which is weird. You go through a labyrinth to get to the labyrinth, but there you go. It's just how it is. Gash, in effect, is his story is he's one messed up gnoll. His pack was slaughtered by the Minotaurs in the maze, I believe, and they spared him, but only if he would help lead intruders to them. So he's like very deferential and muling and, great masters and all this kind of thing. But he, as soon as he can, he wants to find some Minotaurs, and when the Minotaurs attack the players, then he'll run away. Now, you can, if you show him kindness, especially if you heal him, then he will befriend the players and try to help them, warn them and try to get them through without, encountering the Minotaurs. That won't definitely happen. Like my players did not. They did not. But it says a character can befriend the gnoll with a successful DC 20 Charisma Persuasion check. If any character uses magical healing on Gash, the check is automatically successful. So, and then if the characters befriend Gash, he warns them to turn back and flee and never return. If the characters insist on entering the maze, Gash goes with them, trying to keep his new friends safe. And if the characters defeat the Minotaurs and move deeper into the labyrinth, Gash can accompany them as a follower and guide, giving the characters advantage on wisdom survival checks to avoid becoming lost in the labyrinth, the larger labyrinth. So that's Gash. Now, so Gash can either be a sort of a golem, I'll help you, but then I'll betray you as soon as I can. Or he can genuinely become a friend if, he's been abused physically and mentally, and, he's potentially becomes an ally of the party. Now, my party was not mean to him, but they weren't particularly nice to him, and most of the overtures or whatever made to Gash were basically to try to pump him for information. Asking about the Minotaurs, the maze, asking about him, how were you here, and they're what, and I described a couple of times, well, he seems kind of wounded, and he seems kind of pitiful. And, at one time, somehow they were talking about packs, because gnolls are in packs, and somebody said something like, you could be part of our pack or something. And he was like, what? And he was like, me, part of your pack? No, that can, what? Your pack? And so I was kind of trying to drop hints that, he's hurt, and, he seems kind of intrigued by this idea of being part of your pack and all of this stuff. But yeah, they just didn't, either they didn't care about messing with him. They were very suspicious of him anyway. They kind of felt like that he was going to betray them, even though I don't feel like I dropped clues. They just picked up on that. So, anyway, when they inevitably ran into Minotaurs, which there's a high chance they will in the maze, because they have to keep trying to get out on stealth rolls and stuff till they make it out, and there's random encounters every 30 minutes instead of, Gash was like, Masters, I brought them to you. And so the fight, and then he ran off, and I think somebody blasted him and just dropped Gash. You're right. So that was the end of Gash. So, but it may go different with your party. Now, another thing that's, it's interesting, it talks about these invocations to Baphomet, dire curses, written on the wall. It makes it obvious that this place has been consecrated in the name of Baphomet. Now, one of my players, I guess, could read Abyssal, and they translated the sigils, but for whatever reason didn't share with the rest of the party. So they just said, what do they say? Because I can read Abyssal or whatever. And I said, well, they're sigils, and it's Baphomet, and, praises to Baphomet, and inverted names of other gods, kind of nasty stuff, but it's about Baphomet. And then the cleric, did a religion check and realized that the area was consecrated to an evil god, but didn't roll well enough to know that it's specifically Baphomet. And the other player, for whatever reason, never shared Baphomet. So it doesn't make a huge difference to the game. It was just kind of an interesting dynamic to me that, by not sharing that information, they couldn't, the party as a whole didn't know exactly what was going on. So I thought that was kind of weird. Now, the player who knew what the sigils said, it plays a chaotic neutral, which is about as close as I'll allow to outright evil in this campaign. So anyway, it was kind of an odd dynamic. I don't know. It was just weird to me. I mean, not weird in a bad way. It was just kind of interesting. It's like, they're just keeping it to themselves. So once you get into the maze itself, there is a maze. And so make sure on page 182, it gives you all the details. It takes an hour. It talks about, do you want to be fast, normal, or slow pace? The corridors are 10 feet wide and tall, and it's really nasty. They're faced with stone blocks mortared into place, and there's bits of flesh and bone littering the floor and splashes of blood on the walls. It's just gross. And the maze itself is not the labyrinth, just this maze, the spiral of the Horned King. Fills the region of the Underdark 1 mile on each side, so it's a mile square. And a network of corridors climbing up to higher levels and ascending to lower ones by way of ramps. The maze requires time, attention, and patience to navigate. So it's kind of a little weird, and if you go to Elven Tower and read their guide on Out of the Abyss, they kind of talk about it too. The dynamics, the mechanic for this maze is a little bit weird, so I'll read it to you here. It says, when the characters enter the maze, have them choose their pace, which is fast, normal, or slow. It takes 1 hour to navigate the maze at a fast pace, 2 hours at a normal pace, or 3 hours at a slow pace. Halfway through the journey, so depending on how long it's taking them, they must make a DC 15 Wisdom survival check. A fast pace imposes a -5 on the check. A slow pace grants a +5. And on a success, the characters find their way out. So on a failure, the characters must start the journey from the beginning. So what this is saying is oh, it takes an hour to navigate the maze at a fast pace, but halfway through it, 30 minutes, you can make a check, and if you make it, if you succeed, then you found your way out. If you don't, you start the journey from the beginning. So it's a little weird. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it's just a little weird. And the longer it takes the characters to navigate through the maze, which is why, the longer of a pace or the slower of a pace you take, and if you keep failing your checks to get out, you got a higher chance of a random encounter. So it says every 30 minutes the party spins in the maze, roll a d20 and consult the maze encounters table to see what, if anything, the characters meet. If Gash was attacked by the characters and fled into the maze, he does his best to bring threats down on them, in which case roll 2 d20s and take the higher result. This is on the random encounters. If Gash is friendly to the party and accompanying them, he tries to steer them away from danger, in which case roll 2 d20s and take the lower result. So you either get advantage or disadvantage, essentially. So your encounters are, you can encounter a corpse, gnawed bones, some gnolls, or some minotaurs. So that's basically what you can keep encountering while you're in there. Now I personally I only wanted to have one combat at most in the maze. So I think think they found some gnawed bones and a corpse, and then, I had them find some minotaurs. I think I actually had them they stumbled upon minotaurs finishing off some gnolls, and so they got to actually see the minotaurs ripping the heads off the gnolls, thus explaining where's all these heads coming from. And so then they got in a big fight with the minotaurs. Minotaur, I know it was the last video or the one before, where I played that clip at the end, that's just stuck in my head, the Minotaur. Anyway, all right. Sorry. Anyway, the one thing to notice on this Minotaur combat is that the first time they have this combat, the Minotaurs can have treasure on them, 32 electrum pieces and 22 copper pieces. And if they encounter them again, one of them wears silver caps worth 25 gold pieces each on the ends of its horns. I didn't do that, but you can. You can give them a little extra treasure out of these random encounters. And at this point, like my Gash, or the Gash in our game, was like, "Masters, I brought you the intruders," and tried to run off, but one of the players threw a spell, and the spell that it like hit a bunch of minotaurs and dropped Gash because he's only got 11 hit points. But one thing that can make this fight interesting is it's 10 feet wide and 10 feet tall corridors, and you can, by the book, you can encounter up to 6 minotaurs. I think I had them encounter 4. I think that's what I rolled, was 4. And I gave them, what I did is they were kind of at a corner, and so there was slightly larger square area. Maybe it was like 20 by 20 with 10 by 10 corridors feeding in and out of it. And so they fought there. But still, that restricted area with those minotaurs can really work against the players. So, keep that in mind. Now, once they finally make it out of the maze and into the labyrinth, remember that there are features for the labyrinth as a whole on page 179 that gives the physical description of the labyrinth. And also remember that while the entire time they're in the labyrinth, the Fair's Rest is everywhere. So any of those effects from the Fair's Rest, including possible wild magic for any spell cast, can happen. If they cast a spell, roll a d20, and if it's a roll of a 1, then there's like a wild magic table you roll on for a random effect in addition to the spell effect. So, check chapter 2 for that. And we were really good last session about rolling for that because I reminded everybody about it. In fact, I think of the couple of players are like hoping, they're like, "Ooh, let's get some wild magic going here." Now, what I did, there's some more encounters you can have. One is the Filth Riddens. One is the March to Nowhere, Yeenoghu's Hunt, and Gallery of Angels. These are all encounters you can have. And then, of course, there's the Maze Engine. Now, what I decided to do, I'm not sure if I'm going to do the Filth Riddens or not. I'm going to read over that again and see. But I'm definitely not doing the March for Nowhere. And the March for Nowhere is where the modrons, they encounter 12 monodrones and a tridrone. And they've been wandering the labyrinth since the Great Modron March, which has been probably hundreds of years. So they're not doing just real well. And through this encounter, they can, basically find out where the maze engine, or as a modron would refer to it, the orderer is. So the reason I'm going to skip this encounter is, one, for time, but two, my players already have a modron with them. He's basically become almost like a pet of the party. The warlock has a modron, and even though she's not evil, she's chaotic neutral, but she's taken a shine to this modron and actually kind of cares about it, as previous sessions have touched on. So I can use that modron to direct them to drop hints about the maze engine, or the orderer, as a modron would call it, and get them there. Drop enough hints that they can go check it out if they want to. So anyway, just check it out. That's on, and it's it really doesn't add a whole lot to the game, or to the campaign, or this part of the adventure. Other than it's kind of interesting. These modrons are kind of interesting. They're from another plane of reality, and it can give them hints about the maze engine. That's the main thing. So check it out. But if you just want some flavor, or if you've never really done modrons, or if you like modrons or whatever, go ahead and do it. The Filth Riddens, I'm going to study it again, and so I'll go into it in another episode. I haven't decided if I'm going to run it yet or not. I probably won't, unless it, and I don't think it does, but I want to double check, unless it definitely adds something to the core adventure, like one of the pieces of the recipe for the relic that they need, that Viseron's going to throw for the end game, for all this stuff, the ritual he's going to cast, the Dark Heart or whatever it is. I'm probably not going to mess with the Filth Riddens, but we'll see. I'll try to touch on it before I finish this part of the game. If I don't run it, I'll try to talk about it. Now, Yeenoghu's hunt, or Yeenoghu, I'll say Yeenoghu. Yeenoghu's hunt is very interesting, because this encounter, they can get not only the heart of a Garistro, which is one of the main components, but they can also, if they're smart, they can get some blood of a demon lord. So this is a very important encounter for the main campaign, and I will go over it in more detail next session. But this is what one of the player that was scouting ahead saw at the end of last session. It says, as you move forward, the sounds of furious battle grow louder. The tunnel ends at a ledge 20 feet above the floor of a large cavern, giving you a perfect view of the conflict below. On the shores of an underground lake, a pack of frenzied gnolls and hyenas surrounds a demon standing nearly 20 feet tall, with massive arms, clawed hands, cloven hooves, and the head of a bull. This is a Garistro whose heart Viseron Devere has instructed you to claim, and the players will know it's a Garistro because Viseron told them what to look for. So they don't have to do like any kind of skill check to recognize it as a Garistro, unless you just want them to. Leading the gnolls is a figure of fearful countenance. Now, this is a demon lord, 12 feet tall, with the head of a snarling amber-eyed hyena. He wields a massive triple flail whose whirling heads smash into the larger Garistro. The gnolls howl their master's name as he strikes swiftly again and again. Yeenoghu, Yeenoghu. I don't know how to say it. Yeenoghu. The larger demon roars, slashing with its bull's horns. And I think that's where I ended, because the guy was scouting, and so I just told him that. But the rest of the boxed text here on page 184 tells the outcome of the battle, and the Garistros killed and all that. But I wanted the full party there to see that. So, I was like, this is what you see. And, they're going back and reporting the party. So hopefully the entire party will kind of move forward, so we can move on. But I will go more into this encounter on the next video, on how I ran it and how it went for my party. Like I said, it can be very important to the overall campaign. And then after this encounter, I'll probably go right to the Gallery of Angels, which is one of the main reasons they're in the Labyrinth, to get those angel feathers from one feather each from 6 different angels. So that's kind of how things ended at at the end of last session. Now, let me go over my notes here and see if there's anything. Yeah, on the slow versus normal versus fast pace, I always default to normal unless I'm told otherwise. But, for that specific encounter, since it, really went into whether they slow, fast, or normal or whatever, I did ask party, I said, what pace are you traveling at? And I said, I always assume normal unless you tell me otherwise. And again, there's this expedition. There's this huge expedition with the players, which kind of, they're all following them through all this maze, and it's kind of weird, really, if you think about it. But, we just role play it again, and we talked about it again last session, that the expedition is there. They're kind of back a little ways, but they don't play an active role unless the party asks them to. And if they do, then, they'll get some of the XP and the loot. So, and I did, again, I tried to give opportunities without being too pushy for the party to befriend Gash, to give them hints that that's possible if they want to. And, we talked about the Fair's Rest. Let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah, and then I skipped the March to Nowhere and went straight to Yeenoghu's Hunt. So, or Yeenoghu's Hunt. So we will go deeper into that encounter on the next video. That's it for this week, and I really appreciate you watching. Please leave this comment a thumbs up. That helps me, or this comment. Please leave this video a thumbs up and a comment. That really helps me out a lot. I appreciate you watching, and we will catch you next time on Shane Plays.
I can't release the name yet.
You told me that he wasn't a student of the university.
Yes.
Right. Now, what was he doing in there?
How should I know? John, we're going in. Okay, be careful. Look, we heard a game of mazes and monsters got a little out of hand over at the university. 15 seconds, bud.
Mazes and monsters?
Right. You know how to play it?
My kids played. I know the game.
Well.
All right, up
5
here.
seconds. Let's go.